Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
And somebody was asking me before the meeting, a couple of weeks ago, we had the at-large A, and you will be, correct me if I'm wrong, you will be voting on these two couples separately. So you vote for one in the at-large A and one at the at-large B when you come to the city council race, right? Okay. And today we have Christine Erickson, who is incumbent, and Nick Weiland. And I told Nick that I was going to tell you all you could be as noisy as you want today. That's okay. We don't have any city restrictions here that I'm aware of. But we do want to keep the questions short so we can get in the maximum number of answers. So when I call on you, please try to condense what you want to ask these two people. And with that, we'll give them each a chance to make some opening statements, and then we will get going. So.
Ladies first.
Ladies first.
Thank you. First, before I get started, I want to thank you all for this opportunity of being here. It's great to see such a wonderful turnout and having an interest in local politics. Oftentimes, a lot of the decisions that are made at the local level do impact each and every one of you, and so thank you for this opportunity. I do want to just announce real quickly with my time, I want to introduce the central candidates. Many of them are here today, and I know in the interest of time, there is not a forum for them. So if I could recognize you and have you stand up, please. We have Kurt Sale, Zach DeBoer, Tom Goldberg, and two that are not here are Scott Bartlett and Thor Barton. So I just want to recognize them as putting their name out there as well. There's 5 candidates running in the Central District, so there will be a runoff, which is what it is. And so feel free to reach out to them. A little bit about me. My name is Christine Erickson. I'm a lifelong South Dakotan. I was raised in Rapid City, South Dakota by my parents. My parents grew up in Yankton. My dad was in the military, in the Army, traveled around a while, and I was born in Rapid City. Since that time, I graduated from National American University, migrated across the state a little bit to Pierre, worked for state government, and then came to Sioux Falls here, where I've been since. Wanted to get back and finish my degree, so I graduated from University of Sioux Falls with a business administration degree. During that time, I met my husband on a complete blind date. That's a story that I would be happy to share with you later. We have 3 beautiful kids, 3 boys that keep us extremely active. Part of my reason for running is my kids. I want them to be able to have a community that's safe, opportunity for education, and really, selfishly, I want them to stay close to mom. And so I would like them to have those opportunities. And I think a lot of that flows over into the rest of the community as well. My husband and I are small business owners. He's a realtor here in Sioux Falls. We started a rental business, and we've been doing that. He's been in the business for a long time. When we got married, we decided that this would be a great opportunity for me to be more active in our kids' lives. I'm able to volunteer in their schools and run our rental business. We focus predominantly on short-term rentals. And it really, like I said, gives me the opportunity to volunteer in their classroom every single week. I serve as a student council advisor for them, and really empowering youth to be that change in our community as we move through. I'm excited to tell you about some of the things that are important to me, some of the things we've been able to accomplish over the last 4 years, and look forward to your questions and finding out what's important to you. So thanks again for the opportunity.
Hello, my name is Nick Weiland. I'm spent about half my life in South Dakota, most of it in Sioux Falls. Lived in Rapid City and Spearfish for a little while. As most of you know, my family is involved with a lot of local politics and South Dakota politics. At one point, I was living in Colorado. My parents had just moved back, and my dad was running for Congress at the time. And I remember going down I-25, and you always kind of think about, do you follow in your dad's footsteps or your mom's footsteps? And at that point, I was really upset with where politics were. I think a lot of us still are, and I had swore it off. Decided that the environment was something that I was passionate about, and that's been my focus for a long time. Now, when I moved back to Sioux Falls, which was about 10 years ago, it became, much more a part of my life. Obviously, my dad had run a couple times for different offices, and I was on the campaign trail with him in 2014, and got a really good look at our whole state and the way people are hurting right now. And you look at the squeeze on the middle class and the poor. We just really need to do something about it, and it can't happen fast enough. So I moved back about a decade ago. 9 years ago, we opened up Harper's Bistro, which is a small business downtown. We employ about 30 people. I know what it's like to make payroll every 2 weeks, and a lot of the reason that the reason I got into this race really is about holding local government accountable. I think we all realize how much pull local government can have in our daily lives, and we need to increase transparency. We need to. It's hard when you have some of these RFP processes and RFQ processes behind closed doors, because a lot of times that means the citizens or even the media then are making assumptions, and we need to be transparent whenever possible. We really aren't at this point. I think it's something that we have to focus on. I think the other couple of points that I have for my campaign are increasing public safety. I think there's a lot that we can do with that. We can look at it in a new light. There are ways, I think, that we can get people on the front end instead of the back end. Instead of putting everybody in prison, we need to increase our health and social service programs and really help our community. Because if you look at the way that crime is being talked about, to me, that issue stems with not having good wages, not having good jobs, and not having a thriving middle class. I think we all know we need a thriving middle class. So I'm really hoping you all get out to vote on April 10th. I'm asking for your vote. I really hope you'll tell your friends about me, and I think this is a really important time. We really need to make sure City Hall is accountable, and that's, I believe, what an at-large seat should do. It should be about all the people, and that's what I intend to do in my time with the City Council.
Okay. You asked me early for questions, so why don't you?
I can go first. That's good.
John, go ahead.
Are the early ballots, is early voting and absentee ballots available yet? That's the election.
The 27th. 26th.
So just a suggestion, when a person asks a question, it probably won't be heard back here, so could you repeat the question, Tom?
Yep.
Yeah, he asked when early voting starts, and that's the 26th.
And it's at the county administration building.
Yep.
County administration.
Auditors.
Blitz is handling the election. Just so everyone knows.
I'll answer.
Right. Go ahead.
Carl Mallet, Sioux Falls. Question for both of you. What would you do to bring good paying jobs to Sioux Falls? Because we know we got thousands of jobs at $10 an hour in Sioux Falls. That's not a livable wage. Mainline airlines are not in Sioux Falls. They're all subbed out. It's a revolving door for working people. I work there just to see how the airline industry works. $10 an hour. You cannot make a living. You cannot support. I was lucky to be on a company that pays a good, decent wage and a good pension. My other question is, what will you do to bring good jobs in, union jobs, and not regular jobs?
Right.
Well, I'm happy to announce I just got the union endorsement last night, which I think goes to show how important the union is. I mean, if you look at wealth inequality right now, a big part of that is the fact that the union hasn't done as well as it should have been doing in the last 20 or 30 years. I think we need to increase our minimum wage. I'd love to look at that in the municipal level. I'm also a business owner. I understand how hard it can be to make payroll, but I also understand that if you pay people well, you get a better employee, and if you're worried about crime, you should be worried about jobs, in my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And I, being on the council, had the opportunity to walk through what that process looks like and how the negotiations are done on behalf of the council. And I would like to see that be a more interactive process. When we talked about fire, police, as well as some of the city employees that are in that particular union, one of the greatest accomplishments that the legislature did, in my opinion, was the pension reform. That was a huge asset. We saved money. We were able to protect that. And I think that's a great asset to talk about. When we talk about livable wages, nothing prohibits a company from paying more than the minimum wage. And so with that, I think that we have to be careful that there is a place for minimum wage jobs. I have nieces and nephews that worked at Dairy Queen, that have worked at other fast food restaurants. And for them, those teachable skills that they learned of being responsible, what does it mean to be able to pay your bills, show up on time, and learn those life skills, are those entry-level jobs. From there, you're only going to go up, and nothing's restricting anyone from paying more than that minimum wage. I think an area that we could focus on when we talk about recruiting new companies is that we need to be looking at the USD Discovery District. This is an area that's been near and dear to me when I was in the legislature for one term, as well as on the city council. We, as a council, wanted to increase some additional funding to focus on high-paying jobs and recruiting companies here that are going to start up and not just have a minimum wage job, but to be able to have that biomedical engineer educational opportunity along with some of those jobs that will come along with that. And so I think that we need to be focusing some recruitment efforts on getting those companies to come in. We're seeing some expansions of new companies. We've got a great industrial area that is seeing one place flourish. However, we can do better at recruiting people and telling them about our favorable business environment here in South Dakota. And so I believe we should focus on that as well, and we can do that through looking at the USD Discovery District and some of the other additional opportunities.
Jim?
The RFP and RFQ has been raised by Mr. Weiland as a circumvention of open government. I'm just curious what Councilor Erickson would have to say about the process. And then secondly, I would say for both of you, we have a mayor right now that says that the events center is running a profit, yet he doesn't include the mortgage payment that has to be made on that event center. Is that good bookkeeping, and is that the way business is done these days?
Just to be clear, did everybody hear the question? I think it was...
No, the RFP.
Yeah, I understand. I just want to make sure everybody had the opportunity to hear the question. The question is in regards to the RFP process, and then there are additional ones. The RFP and RFQ process I have sat on before, as well as many other counselors. This was not a practice in the past. When I was asked to sit on this process, I had a director go to bat for me saying, let's bring in Erickson and have her see the process, because I was questioning it. I was asking. It's not smoke-filled rooms. It's not, hey, you like this one, right? Wink, nod. There is none of that takes place. What I want to make sure to note on this RFP, RFQ process is that you're there to vote on the merits of it. There's a matrix, you have a score, you bring in the proposals, the proposing people, to ask them questions to maybe, is this an option? Is this an option? What does this look like? They all have questions for those on the city as well. The whole intent of the RFP, RFQ process is to take the favoritism out of it, to take the lobbying effort out of it. And so while the administration has shared when people are proposing on those, I think that we have to be careful for the best for the citizens is to making sure that those decisions are being made in mind saving you money in the end, and you're getting the best bang for your buck. It's an unbiased approach. It's objective, and again, uses metrics. At no time did I ever feel pressured that I had to vote or score a certain RFP, RFQ process. Now, with me saying that, do we need to make the process better? Absolutely. We should always be making sure every process is made better. There have been RFPs and RFQs that I have not sat on that have come before the council. And as they came to us, they came to our desk at 5 o'clock on a Friday, a 200-page report. I have a family and we're running from soccer to hockey to basketball to football. We're running all over town. To read a 200-page document, I made the time to do that to make sure I knew what I was voting for. However, that left me 2 days, which I have a job, a family, and other responsibilities, to try to get into several different directors to meet and have my questions answered. It's an extremely frustrating process. And so a few weeks ago, one small change, it is a step in the right direction, was asking, we want these contracts ahead of time when we're looking at the management contract. We want them at a minimum 7 days earlier. They have to come to us at an informational meeting. And instead of just coming to an informational meeting with a PowerPoint presentation showing me the highlights that you think are important, I want the contract. I want to know everything that's in that contract. And not only do I get to see it, but you all get to see it. It's listed out there for the public. Now, while this may not seem like a huge game changer, it's a step in the right direction. And the council voted unanimously for this. We wanted to make sure that this was just an opportunity to get access to information better and transparency. We always need to be striving to be more transparent. We always need to be striving to have the information out there as best as we can. And that comes with the council as well as a relationship with the administration.
I'm going to jump on just the RFP and RFQ process really quick. Those shouldn't be just a rubber stamp for the mayor. And I think that's what's happened, is these processes, one, are behind closed doors, so the population doesn't really know what's happening. And what ends up happening is a lot of these things get voted on without the councilors really knowing what they're voting on. And if I was in office, I wouldn't vote for it if I didn't know what was happening in the process. And with an RFQ, it's a quote. It's not, you don't get an itemized detail on that RFP or RFQ, and I think that's a huge problem. As far as the event center and the way that has been, I mean, there's a lot of problems with the event center. First of all, it should have been built downtown. Second of all, you know, the siding settlement is a huge issue. That shouldn't have happened, and unfortunately, our mayor wasn't that upfront about where those costs had come from, and I just don't think that's the right way to run a city. I think you gotta be as transparent as you possibly can, get as much voters involved in the process, and I would really like to see the RFPs and the RFQs put up publicly so we know the bids that didn't make it, because I think that's important. It holds people accountable.
Did she want to respond? Yeah.
The only thing I want to piggyback on that is nothing is prohibiting any other proposer from bringing their proposal forward. And so oftentimes they have been shared, sometimes they've not been shared. We've seen over the last 4 years in my time, a couple have shared, even a couple shared before it was announced that someone else won, and I think there's probably some strategy to that as well. There were some Christmas cards created. And so nothing is prohibiting in state law from the other proposals to bring that forward. And I think that's an important aspect to think about. The other thing, the RFQ process is a request for qualifications. So we're not necessarily looking at a particular, we might be looking at an area, but we want to know what are your qualifications, and each person has their best foot forward to show maybe what they want to do, but that's not necessarily part of the process. It's really the qualifications of, can you get this project done?
Eileen, go ahead.
This question is primarily for Christine. I'm just reading your brochure, and you said you will continue to fight to, and one of the things is protect our family values. And those words are I don't know what you mean. You're saying family values. I have family values, you have them, we all have our own family. I want to know what your family values are.
For my family values, I have 3 young kids, and I am trying to teach and train them up as best as I can to be an active member in this society. We oftentimes, in middle school, elementary school, see bullying being a major problem. And it's heartbreaking seeing my son come home, witnessing it from someone else, and going, what do I do? As a mother, it's my responsibility to teach my kids to not be discriminatory, to be a good friend. If you see somebody at a table by themselves, go sit by them. Me as a person, that's important for me too. Before I got involved in politics, I have 0 background in politics before I started this. I simply stayed home with my kids and ran our rental business. And so for me, getting involved meant, how can I be a voice for my kids? How can I be a good example for them? Everything I do, they're watching me. If they hear me on the telephone, if they hear me maybe upset about an issue, they are watching me. And so my family values, for me personally, go back to my family and what I can do to be a good example for them. I understand everyone in this room, if you asked them this question, I bet I would get a different answer from every single person. If I also asked every single person in this room what the role of government is, I think I'd get a very different opinion on that too. And that oftentimes is a decisive issue that we have between the council and our administration right now, is what is that role of government and where do we invest our dollars? What do we do with different programs? And we've had to work together and collaborate together to find those workable solutions to making sure that our items that are important are moving forward. And I think you saw some of that happen this last this last budget season, that this council was able to make some small changes during a big budget time. And so for me, my family values are my kids, my family, the job my husband does, the right to public safety, making sure if I have a need, public safety is going to show up when I need that help. And we've been in instances that we've needed that to show up. And so for me, that's where my family values come into. But again, I do recognize that each of your family values mean something different to you.
Answer that too.
Family values, absolutely. You know, to me, it's about taking care of the middle class right now. That's you know, I think taking care of our fellow men and women and kids is really what we're lacking in Sioux Falls and South Dakota and America. It's a big issue. When I look at, I have a soon-to-be stepson at home. He's 8 years old. And you look at some of the struggles that they have in our school system. Luckily, his school has breakfast and lunch provided, which helps a lot. I mean, you look at how hard it is right now to pay for daycare, make sure you have all those basics met. We're living in tough times. I mean, our wages aren't high enough. It's hard to keep food on the table and a roof over your head, and I think that's where we really need to focus. My family values, I mean, I come from a strong family. We got 5 kids. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and a niece now, Emerson, and I want them to thrive in Sioux Falls, and I think the youth we need to keep our youth, and I think that's such an important thing as we grow, because Sioux Falls is growing. We need to figure out how to keep our youth here, and I think there's a couple of things to do with that. And some of it comes into listening to them, listening to what they want, providing the jobs that they need to stay here and have a productive life. And I don't think we're doing that right now. And I think that we do have a potential to really increase the way that we listen to what our youth has to say and keep them around. I think that's really important.
Okay, Pam?
Okay, as a resident of Sioux Falls, I was really disappointed in the latest decision on the downtown, the parking spaces turned into a hotel. I just want, we didn't even talk about that, but I feel like that was just such a disappointment that we really didn't look deeper into that. And so I don't feel that confident with the current council right now. But my question would be, how do we grow jobs from within? Utilizing some of our career and technical, and then how does that translate into better jobs? And then also, we need to talk about affordable housing. So how do people afford to live here? It's getting much more difficult.
Yeah, I think affordable housing is a huge issue right now. You look at, in Detroit, they had a pilot study where they took a parcel of land, zoned it for tiny homes, and it allowed a lot of single, these weren't families, they were more looking at single people that were trying to get out of a bad situation. And it allows them, some home ownership. Something they've done in Burlington is they started a land trust where the city would start a trust fund that would be able to basically buy the land, and the homeowner would do a 99-year lease at a really low rate, gets people in a home. That's really important. Jobs, we need tech jobs. And one thing that, I think our culture in Sioux Falls kind of fights back a little bit, which I think is a big mistake, is wind energy. We're teaching our kids how to work on these wind farms, but we're not incorporating the technology here in home. That's a huge mistake. I think the parking ramp hotel venture needs to be repealed. I think the fact that we're doing business with a company under criminal investigation is a huge mistake. Not to mention the illegal dumping of asbestos and the loss of life that happened at the Copper Lounge. That's just not something to take lightly. And it is an ongoing problem. You see the McKinnon House. There was an issue with what happened at the McKinnon House. So many things can be fixed with digitizing City Hall, making it a process that actually works for the people. You can text or email permit people that are issuing these permits, and there's a much easier and efficient way, and it saves money at City Hall. So those are my things.
Thank you. I will address each of them. If I forget one, please remind me. I know there's many questions within that. One of the things I want to talk about is the parking ramp. I understand the concerns that come along with that. I did support the parking ramp. We can build a $10 million parking ramp, and it generates $0 in property taxes. We can do a mixed-use structure, which will also continue to address the parking needs for the next 10 years to come. We are partnered now with Lamont companies. I think there's a little miscommunication with who is building this. Aaron Holtgren is not building this structure. The structure is being built. JLG, Journey Group, and Lamont companies are the three companies that are in there. We have 4 personal guarantors. The project is being run and managed by Jeff Lamont from Lamont Companies, like I said. This project cost is $20.6 million. There is a enterprise fund that, meaning that it's self-generating. The parking system is an enterprise fund. That down payment will be $4.2 million. Currently, there's about $5 million in reserve. That parking ramp will not pay for itself, but the system as a whole will pay for those payments going forward. This conversation just didn't happen within the last 2 years. This conversation has been going on since Mayor Munson back in 2007. And so while oftentimes we hear extra things that are going on, I want you to understand that there's so much more that has gone into the development of this particular project. Again, since 2007, that's a long time ago. We've got to be addressing the needs for our downtown, and if we can also have it be a mixed parking use, that's a benefit for our citizens, generating well over $250,000 in property taxes annually, as well as bringing a hotel, as we see the new announcement with Sioux Steel and the railroad redevelopment. Huge, these are great things. The Sioux Steel one is a private development, but what a great thing for our community to have. That's been taking a long time to get that done as well. And now having another hotel down there, as well as some mixed use, it's a benefit for our community for that. Again, I want to reiterate that this development is being managed and developed by Lamont companies. There are 4 guarantors, which are personal guarantors. That has never happened before. That if one peels off, they're not equally held 25, 25, 25, 25. If one were to move away or unforeseen circumstance of being ill, the others would hold them responsible, which is a great asset. The summer of 19, the ramp will be opened, and then a year later, the hotel will follow. The cost per space is another item that's been of contentious. We are getting additional storm sewer replaced, as well as Mall Avenue advocating, and those things are in the project as well. And so when you divide the math out, Carl Walker is Walker Associates. They do all different types of studies. There was recently an article out in Minneapolis that discussed how you calculate the price per space. And this price per space, we're in that 15 to 25 is what Carl Walker says. We're right around that 25, a little on the higher end, but we're not at 70 like some have reported. And so I want us to be mindful of that as well. I know that my answer is probably not popular to a lot of you, which applauded my opponent for his, but I want you to know where I stand, why I stand. There's not been a shred of evidence that Legacy is under criminal investigation. There are lawsuits that happen. I expect more lawsuits to continue to happen through this process. It's part of the process. That does not mean that they are guilty. I cannot comment on a lot of that. I don't have the details of that. But what I'm excited about is Lamont Companies, a company from Aberdeen, South Dakota, saw vision in our downtown community and vision to be able to build this and address the parking needs for the next 10 years to come. As far as workforce housing and affordable housing, this is an issue that we are always going to struggle with, and that's a terrible answer. We're just not going to be able to build our way out of affordable housing. We can't. But we do have programs at the city level that I think we need to do a better job of being proactive to the little guy that says, you know, you may only have 15 properties, 20 properties. How can we get you some of the incentives we have with rehabilitation and making those changes to the core? Right now in 2017, there's over 5,000 parcels available to be developed. And so as we continue to see growth go out, we have to also focus on what we have available in our inventory instead of just continuing to grow out for it and keep putting in more infrastructure. It's expensive, we gotta replace it. We have the infrastructure. Let's start looking at those parcels within our community that we can start developing. I think that those are going to start helping with some of that workforce housing, and then we have to also be partnering with those developers. Oftentimes, some of them are the little guys that want to develop in those core areas that we can address our workforce housing, but we're not going to build out of it, and we've got to continue to press forward.
Sharon.
Can I just say one thing to that?
Go ahead.
It was a mistake to vote for the parking ramp with Aaron Holcrum on as a guarantor. I really think that's true.
Sharon, go ahead.
I do think that was maybe an oversimplification of the current management's involvement in the parking ramp project, given that they were there at the beginning of when things were voted on. But that kind of speaks to one of my questions, which is, we listened to John Paulson and Janet Brecky, I don't know if it was last week or a couple weeks ago, and one of the things that came up was the intent of our strong mayor system and what that has become as the council has come to be seen, rightly or wrongly, as more of a rubber stamp on especially the current mayor's plans or what he'd like to see happen. I'd like both of you to speak to if you think that we should shift back more to the original sort of view of what the strong mayor system was meant to be, and concrete ideas for what you would do, not just, well, that would be a great thing, but what can we do? Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Unfortunately, our city council has become a little bit of a rubber stamp for the mayor, and I think we need to look at how we give some power back to the city council, because the city council is a check on the mayor, and that hasn't been the case, especially in the last year. I think it's something that if you can elect some more progressive people to the city council, that we can attack that issue. I like Janet's answer that she gave the other week. I think there's a real needed, we really need to look at the charter, see if there's any way to make it work for more of us, not just some of us. And if we can take a few extra seats on the council this year, I think that's really possible. Bye, Jeff.
Good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. As you all know, we do have this strong form of mayor government. One of the benefits of that is we have a lot more authority at the local level that, unless it's restricted by state government, we can make some of those changes. And so that's the benefit that I see, that we can make a positive impact for the citizens here. We do need to be looking at ways that we can enhance our charter. Ways that we can continue to have the checks and balance. The City Council has really looked as the policy-making legislative body and the checks and balance. It's pretty clear in charter what that means. Doesn't mean it shouldn't be adjusted and changed over time to strengthen that. You are, as a city councilor, as I've been on this in this public service gig for 4 years now, I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about I might have a fantastic idea, but if I can't convince at least 4 other council members to agree with me, I can't get a lot done. Well, we've been able to do that, and I think some of those examples are oftentimes missed. One I'll point to our last budget recently. Councilor Starr and I teamed together to find a way to put the money back in for some of these nonprofits. Many nonprofits were being cut in our community, one being the Bishop Dudley, an amazing organization that is changing the lives of people in our community. And to be able to put that funding back in, what we did is we cut remodeling the bathrooms of the baseball stadium and found a different way to fund something else. Because we don't know what's going to happen with that baseball stadium, we said, well, let's not remodel these bathrooms yet. We want to take care of the people. How can we do that? Another example I'll use that was a while ago is pool passes. The administration came very fast to us and said, we're getting rid of free pool passes, we're raising the rates on seniors, veterans, all people, no more free pool passes, sorry, here we go. And it came to the park department, it came to the city council, and we were supposed to vote on it in the same night. It was so fast. We quickly, amongst ourselves, said, I'm not okay with this, I'm not okay, how can we change this? What can we do? We put the brakes on. It was not popular, we'll say. If you watch back that video that evening, it was a little hot under the collar that night. But we did it. We pulled back and said, no. This council wants to make this change. We believe in free pool passes for our most vulnerable children. In the summertime, growing up as a kid in Rapid City, I spent every single day at the pool while my parents were working. It was kind of my babysitter. We joked about it. But oftentimes, kids are using that here. They need a place to go, keep them out of trouble, and allow them to be able to go to the pool. Another instance I want to talk to you, 2 more, I'll be brief about them. The other one was the Freedom Pass. Again, not signed by the mayor. This was an initiative brought forward by the city council. We flexed our muscles, as some would say at that time, and we did something as simple as allowing the youth to be moving about the city, get to the libraries, get to the mall, get to jobs, and move around. It gave them that flexibility, and in turn, we were trying to create lifelong users of the transportation system. It was not signed by the mayor, but we did it. Another issue that came forward, I'm a personal freedom person. I'm not a smoker. If you choose to smoke, it doesn't bother me. I don't know that it's the role of government to be putting that on others. I had a really hard time when that was brought forward by the administration to just say, yep, let's just blanket this and say no smoking all across the board. We as a council, again, took back and said, wait a minute, we need to build a consensus. We need to find out where we can compromise. We sat down with every single council member and found out what's important to you. Well, I don't like the fine. Okay, let's remove the fine. Well, I don't like this. Okay, let's try to get rid of that. Well, I don't like this. Okay, well, I like this. And so some of us had to give a little bit more than we were comfortable with, and some had to compromise on the other end a little bit. And so there are examples of that taking place, but oftentimes it might not be picked up by the media, it might not be discussed as much. And so the citizens may not hear about that as all often as you should. But we've done some good things over the years, making sure that we're taking care of the most vulnerable, as well as moving forward or stopping something from coming forward as well.
Danny.
Thank you. This is for both of you candidates. What would you consider to be your top attribute that would make it interesting for those of us in this room and the rest of the people voting? That why would we want to vote for you? Tell us the number one reason that you should be the next councilman.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. I think that the best leaders have humility, and I think that's what I always look for in a leader. And it's something that I think comes with listening. I mean, there's a lot of things that come with humility, and I think we need more people in positions in these positions that aren't necessarily seeking it out for the fame and the fortune, but are really fighting for the people. I grew up fighting for the people. That's what my dad's whole mission was all about. I think that's my best attribute. I'm a good listener. I study my issues and really try to make as an informed decision as I possibly can. Communication's huge, and that's something that we're missing funny as it is, we all have our phones and we're constantly on them and communicating. We've really lost the ability to communicate, especially face to face, and I think that's what we need. I think we need people that will listen, communicate, and stick up for stuff. It is really important to stick up for what you believe in, and I rarely shy away from that.
Thank you for the question. One of, I feel, my best attributes is collaboration. In this nonpartisan role, I've been able to work with every single counselor. I've been able to sit down and find compromise and solutions. I am find a solution. Oftentimes when I am receiving a phone call or an email from someone, I'm trying to identify the problem and find out how can we make this better? What can we fix? Example I'll give you just recently, and I've been criticized for saying, oh, it's just cupcakes, Christine, who cares? It's just cupcakes. But the issue is so much bigger than that. Many of you have seen in the news a company by the name of Intoxibates, where they were using small traces of alcohol in their frosting. Yeah. You will not get drunk on this little teeny tiny trace of it. They're using other seasonings and recipes in there, and it's really exciting. Unfortunately, somebody told on them and they had to shut business. So they reached out to me. I partnered with a state legislator. I said, here's the law. It's from Prohibition. This is crazy. Let's find a way to get this small business back in place. What's interesting is I found out later that those that may have tattled on this particular business were also in violation. And so what we had to do is we had to hog house a bill, which isn't always really easy to do. It's not very common. It's difficult to do. Senator Peters hog housed a bill, got this change through, and it's through that collaboration with other leaders throughout the state that I feel I'm most effective. I'm willing to call up the Department of Public Safety and say, why do you have this law still on the books? You have alcohol, rat poison, and metal shavings in the same law. The intent is not that. It was really to make sure people were not being poisoned with alcohol is really what the intent was. And so while it seems silly of a cupcake issue, it was much bigger than that we need to stay up with innovation. Technology is changing our world, and we've got to stay up with innovation and allow small businesses to be able to thrive and be successful. And so through that collaboration, I was able to collaborate with not just myself, Councilor Neitzer, I don't know if any of you know him, he is a fantastic researcher. He was helping me find model legislation. We were teaming together, bouncing ideas off. We were giving them to a couple different legislators. We then had to go to the House side. We testified over the phone. And so through that, that's what I feel is my strongest attribute, to find a resolution to solutions, to getting people back either on their feet, getting back in business, or whatever that issue may be. And that's why I feel like you should vote for me on April 10th for City Council at large.
Question over here.
We're out of time, so our two candidates will be sticking around for a while, as well as our Central District candidates. So if you'd like to visit with them, feel free to do that. Otherwise, next week we're hoping to have Minnehaha County legislators. Is that right, Randall?
It was news to me, but yes, I'll be back next Friday.
Okay, so next Friday we'll talk about the session just passed.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming, and have a good St. Patrick's Day.
You know, that I don't think it's a secret that people know I'd love to be your mayor forever.
We don't come up here to entertain you. We come up here to inform you.
What kind of morons run this outfit?
Mr. Danielson, we're about ready to start if you want to take a seat.